Everybody, my name is Nikhil, and my topic for today is LGBTQ inclusion, Islamophobia, and a transnational structure, a case study of LGBTQ appropriation by the Hindu-Nationalists for majoritarian ends in India. So, what my paper basically argues that there is a, a hegemonic transnational structure being created by the populists of the world, where they are including and appropriating LGBTQ movements by softening their stance towards their inclusion by giving them some representational rights legally. In that process, they are creating an Islamophobic a nationalistic regime which is against this intrusion, that so-called intrusion that the populists would say towards the national integrity. And similar things are happening in India. My paper argues two things basically: that the appropriation, specifically talking about the Hindu nationalists of India, where the appropriation of the LGBT community for further the BJP Hindu-Nationalist government, which has been here in India since 2014, is further marginalizing and alienating Muslim populations in India. And two, this is their tactics to garner more support from various feminists, postcolonial, and queer theorists, and they gain significant traction, and the sentiment of anti-Islam, anti-Muslim people gain significant traction when these communities also vocally resist or vocally promote the Hindu character of India, basically. So these are the two arguments, and this is the larger argument that I'm presenting. I would narrate in very briefly because it's a 10-15 minute thing, and so in first I'll talk about India and how the softening of stance of a Hindu nationalist anti-queer party has suddenly started including a lot of LGBTQ population to garner more support towards their anti-Islamic stand. Two, I'll also talk about that how this is also a narrative that has been established even in the West, and how I would also talk about the new laws, not the new laws, but the new developments in Poland and Hungary. Very briefly. So first, when we start about the India, India is being governed by a Hindu nationalist party since 2014. Why do I say a Hindu nationalist party? Because its agenda is to create a Hindu nation, which is only where Hindus are the only rightful citizens of the Indian state. They are also governed by a cadre organization called the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which is generally called the RSS, and they also have been very anti Muslims because they think that the Indian culture, which is generally Hinduized, was in medieval India attacked by the Muslim invaders, and that has uh, altered the fabric of the Indian culture, and hence they want to honor and create back this big Hindu force which should govern India and create an Akhand Bharat. So the othering of other communities starts when this Hindu idea is being forced into the public continuously. When we see the creation of the BJP's agenda since 20-25 years is to create a temple for a god, for a Hindu god, and there have been riots against it, and there have been multiple riots. And when we see since the inception of the 2014, there have been multiple attacks on specifically on the Muslim population, also other marginalized communities. For example, there have been number of lynchings that have happened in suspicion of uh, cow slaughter, cow transportation, or anything related to meat, because Hindu nationalists are very sensitive towards cow and slaughtering. But however, where it is allow slaughtering of cow meat and is uh, of meat is allowed in plenty of states. In India, they were specifically attacked even if there was buffalo or goat, just in the name of cow. There was number of lynchings that happened against the Muslims all over India, and also against the other marginalized community called the lower caste in India. And there have been multiple instances in the first term of the BJP government where this could be seen. There have been other laws which target Muslim populations, for example, the Citizenship Amendment Act, which specifically targets people who took refuge in India, and they belong they follow the religion Islam. Also, it is an attack on already living population in India who need to prove their identity that they have been living in India. And whereas, because as a poor developing country, India's identification system has been really laxed, and there are multiple problems on different levels. So this is how the BJP government attacks the Muslim population. And parallelly, when we see that this, I'm just, also there is one more law called the UAPA, which is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, under which a lot of activists, a lot of people who are basically jailed without any due process, because they are a threat to the national security, and this is a draconian law which is in place, and this is also used as similarly for impinging a state power towards specific population and specific people who dissent against the government, or not, but they don't follow the ideology of the Hindu-Nationalist party. So when we see that how this development of of LGBTQ rights. So in 2017, there was abolition of Article 377 in the Indian Penal Code, which is an all in all an anti-sodomy act, which criminalize any unnatural activity of sexual behavior, unnatural meaning, the natural meaning heteronormative. And the second was the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill, which was passed in 2018-19. And these are important two things, because there was no law governing the transgenders in India. One, two, there was a criminalizing act, and there the stance of a lot of BJP people, which was very anti-queer, suddenly softened in the sense. And when the abolition of 377 happened by the Supreme Court, a lot of BJP leaders, such as the Minister of Finance and Minister of Health, were very soft, were in support of decriminalizing, of abolishing this act, because it was very criminal, it was brutal. Even the Hindu cadre-based organization which governs the BJP, the RSS, there were many leaders who were in support of abolishing such an act, because so this is a trend and then when this Transgender Persons Act came, the narrative was created that none of the previous governments, which were largely secular in the name, didn't create all of this, but the BJP government brought and included the people of the third gender as and a big community of LGBTQ people is included in the citizenship of India, and they are being given rights. So there is a softening of stance. Also, by accommodating all these identities, they have also appropriated a Hindu culture, in the sense the queer the queer population, of course, is not homogeneous. It's very heterogeneous, and it has so many different facets. Politically, also, there is many divisions in the queer uh, people, and in there are also, but it is also led by a lot of elitist, class, educated have men who are also garnering support of the Hindu Nationalist Party, because a nationalistic representation gives a lot of queer people a considerable representation which they always seek. So by also softening this, the BJP also softening over this, and also when they create all these laws, there's also a Hindu force in the queer community which agrees to the appropriation, the Hindu appropriation of queer people, because they think that the Hindu religion is very liberal and has accommodated and has been different identities and sexualities have always been part, and this appropriation happens through Hindu by uh, through Hindu mythologies and scriptures and everything. So this is where we lead to a notion called homo-nationalism, which is a term created by Jaspreet Bhuar, which states that there is basically there are queer people who are at the intersections of nationalistic idea of safeguarding the integrity and the race and the caste and whatever supremacy in the nation. Uh, so there is a softening of stance. There is an Hindu appropriation of queer people in India, and there are homo-nationalists which belong to the queer community but want to be attached to the Hindu idea because it obviously gives them considerable representation, but also gives them a big cultural representation and a big defense of showing that the Hindu culture is part, the queer culture is part of the Hindu culture. So these are what India stands and how India is moving towards it. And by doing this, by these elite queer people who are homo nationalists are also anti-Islamic, of course, because they think that when uh, Hindu nation, the India was very secular and very liberal and very accommodating until the invaders of medieval India, who belonged to the Muslim leadership of West Asia, came and created this conservative idea in India and protected their idea, which the idea of India, which was more Hindu, more liberal, and everything. So these homo nationalists also play a role in extending that anti-Islam narrative, which the Hindu Nationalist Party of India wants to extend. Parallelly, when we see this with the world stage, in Germany there was a Muslim test, and even Judith Butler in one of the on Christopher Street Day, accepting Civil Courage Prize, mentioned that this homophobic idea that Muslims are homophobic is an anti-Islam narrative, which Islamophobic narrative, which even the queer population, the homo nationalists, are projecting, and aligning with this idea of creating a narrative transnationally. Obviously, Judith Butler didn't mention about transnational mention of this idea, but she specifically mentioned that in the West, this Islamophobic idea, and also to impinge on Muslims by creating this narrative that they are homophobic, their culture is homophobic, or their culture is limited to the idea of heteronormativity, and they don't accept this is happening in Germany in a secular centrist government, under the centrist government, but not by the government but by the homo nationalists. And when we see it also in the US, when in 2016 a lot of queer people, specifically white, gay, rich people, supported Donald Trump because they also supported his idea of maintaining the integrity of the nation by supporting the white people and the core population of America, what is America is, and also being against this intrusion and immigration and all these new communities, or basically not new communities, but there have been these communities staying in America since decades now, but also this protection of the white core population of America and safeguarding it from this Muslim immigration, basically, which they term it as Muslim invasion and everything. So this is, and then when this is of course like when we see Poland or Hungary, and now when so Poland and Hungary have been very liberal towards same-sex marriage, same-sex associations in the past. Poland's Poland's idea of accommodating homosexual identities have been there since 1932, even Hungary. So both of these states were first, as when became part of the EU value system, when became part of EU, were liberal towards this idea of same-sex LGBT rights. And suddenly, when this idea, when they garnered this support in the refugee crisis, when they were anti-immigrants, they didn't allow the refugees from West Asia to enter their states. They garnered a lot of support from these communities as well. Now, when the refugee crisis has passed a little, and there have been this, now the conservatives are moving towards more conservative ideas of of focusing on the religious aspects, and the religion. The Viktor Orban government and the Poland government both are impinging on the LGBTQ people. So there is a trend. Basically, there is a trend, a transnational structure, when to get the support of LGBTQ population for their anti-Islamic and Islamophobic narratives. And now the West has moved a little more further, with Poland and Hungary as examples, when the conservatives have created this force of continuously maintaining their government, of of successfully doing of successfully creating this narrative, which are Islamophobic, and refusing to let people enter as refugees in the country. They have succeeded in that idea of Islamophobia, and then then they start impinging on the LGBTQ population itself. So I'm just arguing that, except the transnational structure, which is anti-Islamic, which can be seen in India and in the West, there is a further step that the right wing and populists might take. We just have Hungary and Poland examples, but I'm just saying as a concluding remark. And in conclusion, this is what I say, that this is how the transnational structure is created, by softening their stance towards the populists are softening their stance to include the right wing, to garner support of feminist postcolonial queer theorists, and also extending their narrative, which is anti-Islamic. And when and this is happening transnationally. This happened in Germany. This happened in US. This has happened in a lot of states in Europe, and this is happening in India as well. So this is where I rest my case. Thank you very much.